and actually work through some of these, and then I'll have you work on some independently. So here it says plot the points from the table in the coordinate plane. Write a linear equation for each function represented by the graph. So linear equations, remember back in chapters 2 and 3, we worked with y-intercept equations. So that's what we're going to be working with for our linear equation. We're going to get it into that y equals, and then our slope x plus and minus where it crosses the y-intercept. So we're going to review that really, really quickly. If I were to go through and maybe draw a graph, a line that cut through like this. Okay, so let's just say that that was a perfect line and it crossed our y-intercept there, and our slope is our rise over our run. So here our slope would be up 25 over 1. So rise of 25 over 1. That would be a positive. So our slope would be 25 over 1x, or just 25x. And then remember, our last part of our equation is where it crosses our y line. So here it's crossing at positive 50. So we would say plus 50. Okay, so that's something that we have to remember when we're writing a y-intercept equation. You have your two pieces. You have your slope, and then you also have your y-intercept. Now, slope in this situation, we can change into decimal form if it's easier for us to work through and solve the equation. We will write it out both ways today. If we have a fraction, we'll also change it into a decimal. Okay, so if we go through and we graph all of the information that's in this table. Okay, so I'm going to go, this I would read 0, 150. So I'm going to go over to 0 and up to 150. Now, every box going up and down on this graph is worth 25. And I got that because here there's two boxes that equal 50. So half of that would be 25. So I'm going to go over to 0 and up to 150 and put a dot. Okay, so that one's done. My next one would be 2, 125. So I'm going to go over to 2 and up to 125, which would be the box above the 100. So there's my next dot. That one's done. Okay, over to 4, up to 100. So over to 4, up to 100. That one's done. Over to 6, up to 75. Over to 6, up to 75. And then over to 8, up to 50. So you should be marking these in your book as I'm marking them on the board. Okay, so now I've got my line. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw the best I can through my line here, or through my dots. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to write the equation for that. Okay, so this is actually, this line is representing something. Okay, it's representing a change of something. So we've got our y-intercept equation. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this one so that you don't think that's part of this one. So y equals our slope within x, and then our y-intercept. So let's do the y-intercept, because remember, that's always the easiest part to remember. So our y-intercept is where it crosses our y line. So that would be at positive 50. So we're going to, or not 50, 150. So plus 150. Okay. Now we're going to do our slope. So to do our slope, we have to do our rise over our run. Now remember, these boxes are not just worth 1, they are worth 25. So we have 25 for our rise over, and then I write 20, 25 over our run was 2 boxes. And yes, those were each worth just 1 each. So over 2. Now, that is a negative slope, so it would be negative 25 over 2x plus 150. Now, another way that this may be written, and probably if you're working story problems, they're going to go ahead and write that slope in its decimal form. So if we want to change this to a decimal, we would do 25 divided by 2, which would give us 12.5x, and that's a negative, plus 150. So either of these two equations would work. Most likely, if they're asking you to solve or use the equation, they're going to give it to you in the decimal form. Okay, so you would have to be comfortable with that aspect. But if they're going to have you use the equation, you're going to be substituting in anyway, so you don't have to transfer it back into that 25 over 2. Okay, so that is working with writing an equation. Okay, and that shouldn't be brand new because we've done this. It's just more of a review. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at B. So once again, we're going to go ahead and graph this information that was given to us. So over to 4 up to 15. So over to 4 up to 15, every box is worth 5. Okay, so 4 up to 15, put my dot. Over to 6 up to 20. So over to 6, my next box over is 6 because each of these was worth 2. Okay, so over to 6 up to 20, put my dot. Over to 8 up to 25, you can see the pattern. You're going over a block and up a block. Over to 10 up to 30, and then over to 12 up to 35. Okay, so there's my points that we were working with. And we don't know if these are discrete or continuous because we don't know what the scenario is. So if you put the line through it, that's fine. Had they given us what X was, then we could decide if it was discrete or continuous. If that was talking about maybe cars, 4 cars and it's going to be, I don't know, can hold 15 people or whatever. Well, then that would be a discrete. We could not do a part of a car. If this was maybe 4 pieces of candy equal 15 calories, well then yes, you could eat a partial piece of candy. So then that would be a continuous. But here we don't know what it is. So either is acceptable if you do the line or the dots. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and write our equation because ultimately that's what we're working on. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my line so I can see where it crosses through. So if I continue this pattern, it's going to go and it is going to cross right here. So I have my y equals, this is my slope, and then where it crossed my y line was at +5. Okay, so now let's do our slope. Now our slope is our rise and our run. So our rise was 1 box, which was worth 5. Our run was 1 box, which was actually worth 2. So it'd be 5 over 2. That is a positive slope. It's going up from left to right. That's a positive thing if you have a little and it goes up. Okay, so our equation is y equals 5 over 2x plus 5. Or we could also write that out as y equals 5 divided by 2 would be 2.5x plus 5. Okay, most likely this is how you're going to start seeing your slope in there when they're giving you an equation to solve. If they're just wanting you to graph the line, then they would, at this level, leave it in the fraction form. As you get older, you're going to have to learn how to change it into that fraction form. Okay, let's go ahead and look at C. So C, the graph is just set up slightly different. Okay, so I want you guys to go ahead and pause your video. And I want you to go through and finish out C and D, and you're going to write your equation. So you're going to graph it, you're going to find your slope and your y-intercept, and you're going to write your equation out. So remember, it's always y equals, this is your slope, and then you always have your x there, and then this is your y-intercept. Okay, go ahead and pause your video and work your way through these two. Okay, so for your equations, you should have ended up with y equals 1x plus 8 for letter C. And then for letter D, you should have had y equals, that's a negative, negative 1/2 x minus 1. Okay, I didn't go through and graph them. You should have yours graphed.